So I am officially recording. Welcome. My name is Shauna Strickland. I'm an Associate Executive Director here at the AARC, and I welcome you to the first of our Lunch and Learns. Dr. Shell and the rest of the education leaders here at the AARC wanted to take an opportunity to talk about where the AARC has been and where we're going with regards to degrees. So I will turn this over to President Shell. I will say, though, that everyone does have the capacity to unmute themselves and speak, but while you are not speaking, then please keep your microphone on mute so we don't have a lot of background noise. President Shell, I'm going to unshare my screen, so you should be able to share yours.
Great. Well, welcome everyone, and I do not have any slides for you, but I wanted to say thank you to everyone who's joining in today. I'm very excited about this new series that we are developing and putting out to our membership. We had a kind of brainchild discussions over the last year with different states as I've traveled about, and trying to understand some of the issues that we have as educators to help move AS programs to BS programs. You know, there's been a lot of things happening this year. In the ARC, we've developed new horizon goals to align with our mission and our goals with committees. We have realized that we have resources available, but we're not quite sure that we know what we don't know. So we've started this series of Lunch and Learn to have some interaction with those of you out in the field that may be having issues or not a clear understanding what the next step for your particular state or education, university or college has to do to help move forward. We know that we sent out the issue paper to our membership for comment, and we approved that by the board late spring, early summer. And we do have the goal of reaching minimum entry to practice as a BS degree and an RRT 10 years away, 2030. But in order to achieve that goal, we need to be clear on our steps as we move forward. We've had an issue paper published and soon to be open access for members to get to on our position as and kind of justifying what we want to do as we move forward. So that will be available to you. We realize also that in order for us to be more engaged and transparent, we need to know what the issues are so that individuals or communities or states are having, so that we can develop tools to help move forward. I know that in the past we say we're gonna do this, but we really haven't been real good about giving you the tools or the expertise to help you move forward, because mostly we don't know what the problems are. We know what a few are, and there's been some successes. So today we're just gonna kind of review our successes and talk about how we can be better at the AARC in making this happen by developing tools that you actually need, or finding experts that have been through the experience that you can reach out to help you in your own environment to move forward. We want to be more collaborative, and we want to be able to have these meetings meet your needs. So this is the kickoff, and in order to get started, we wanted to give you a little bit background of some of the things that our committees have been doing. So I've asked each one of the speakers here to give a brief synopsis of some of the things that they have been going on, so we kind of have an idea. But we want to hear from you. I'm going to ask you to hold your questions till after all the speakers have given their synopsis. We're going to have about 35 minutes at the end of the introduction to let you know, to get you to speak to us, and we'll hopefully develop our programs in the future from those issues that you bring forward. We hope to have hearty discussions and brainstorming, and also help us identify barriers and successes. So again, I'm Karen Shell. I teach here at KU Medical Center and at the University of Kansas in Kansas City. I've been a long time respiratory therapist, but relatively new to education. I entered the education field teaching about 5 years ago. And advancement in education is key to our success. So that's kind of where I'm at. I really want to have the time for the rest of the group to introduce themselves and kind of go through some of their experiences that we've had in the past, and some of the tools that we have available that you may or may not know about. So I'm going to introduce the next person here, Dr. Linda Goodfellow, and we'll let her do a self-introduction and kind of give you a recent activity that she was part of. Linda? Are you there?
Am I on now?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, very good. I'm Linda Goodfellow, as Karen just mentioned, and I am at Georgia State University, and I've been here about 30 years. My current role is Senior Associate Dean, but I still call myself a respiratory therapist. And so I've been asked to talk today about a focus group that I was invited to facilitate for the educators of the New York Society for Respiratory Care. This was about a week or so after the Congress meeting this past November, and there were around 20, 25 educators there to participate in this forum. And the reason for this gathering to begin with is that there's legislation before the New York State Legislature that would mandate the practice of the entry to practice respiratory care being at the bachelor's level. And there's a timeline of 5 years. Now, this legislation is in session now, and they are very confident, and the lobbyist was there, that this is going to pass. And so that is when they decided that they needed to hold a meeting of all the associate and bachelor's program directors at that point to sort of begin to chart a path forward. So I've got a few slides, and Shauna, can you bring those up, please, if you have that?
Yes, ma'am.
So one of the things that I did to begin with is we went around the room and just said, you know, I understand why you're here, but what are your expectations at the end of the day? In other words, you know, what are you wanting to see happen? What do you want to accomplish? That sort of thing. So I'm not going to read all these comments, and there were far more comments. I sort of put them into more readable categories here. And I know that this will be archived, so you can come back to this. But, you know, there was a lot of angst in the room, I will say, as we began talking about expectations. And there were some who were very, very vocal, and then there were some who said, you know, I don't see how this is going to work, and just simply shut down. So the emotions and the thought processes were all across the spectrum here. But you can see here that a lot of them, you know, they wanted to plan, they needed some direction and guidance to move forward. They were concerned about the harm that this might cause. And so we had probably an hour and a half of just talking about expectations and the ramifications of the legislation. From there, then we actually took a break for lunch because we all needed a break after that session. And when we came back from lunch, or actually during lunch, people circulated and we started a SWOT analysis. So on the next slide, we have, as we all know, when you've gone through these things, you sort of do an analysis of your strengths. And here are the comments, again, categorized by major themes here. And let me just first say, I'm not a qualitative researcher or anything like that, so don't hold me to those strict structures that have to be adhered to when you're doing qualitative research. This is a SWOT analysis. And you can see a lot of the things that people believe their society and their education system provided. You know, they promote the profession. They want best practice for patient care. They want recognition by Medicare, and on and on. Again, you can read these yourself. I won't take the time. I'm allotted just a few minutes here. But on the right there, you can see overall it was very positive in the strengths that people believed and felt that were present there in the New York Society. And many indications that that they expressed that the profession has new opportunities and lots of growth ahead of us. And so it was very positive, and as we reviewed this area of the analysis. Then we went into our weaknesses. The next slide. And you can see, you know, ourselves, we are our worst enemies. We still have CRTTs. New York is a union state, and so there was a lot of discussion about the union minimum. And for me, not being in a union state, that was quite an education for me, I'll say. But the bottom line, after we went through the weaknesses, is that they believe that requiring the BS degree will be hard to achieve. Now, they have a mandate of 5 years, and so we sort of took pause here as to why they think this is going to be hard. And I wasn't trying to sugarcoat it, that say, oh, this is going to be easy. No, it's good that they have that, not an expectation, but that they understand that this is going to take some heavy lifting, but the benefits will be very rewarding. And so at that point, we went into what our threats might be. And the SUNY system and the CUNY system, again, there was a lot of discussion about the interaction between those two systems in New York, and then some of the barriers that these two systems create. And so that really turned into a big discussion as part of our threat analysis here. But you can still see this attitude of this will never work. The RT shortage is bad now, and it'll even get worse after this. But anyway, you can see overall the reasons why the New York legislation may do harm to the state educational programs and workforce demands. Yes, this was sort of a down part of our discussion that day, but you know what, when we went to what the opportunities are next, I think you can go to the next one. We all sort of got to a bottom place, if you know what I'm talking about, and then we said, okay, what do we do now? And that's when the opportunity discussion really sort of took off here. So they wanted to set the national stage for entry to practice, New York. They want to be the leader in this. They want to advance the profession. They want to avoid the brain drain. They want the APRT. And this phrase here, I loved it. Let's cast our own shadow. We want to be paid. And so, yes, we ended here after this full analysis on a very positive note, and looked at all the prospects that might result from the passage of this legislation. And so after that, then we said, okay, what do we do now? And we can go to the next slide. And we sort of said, okay, what's the first step? And not everyone was in agreement with these 3 steps that I'm about to quickly show, but they really got down to where, you know what, we need to really recruit students, more students and better students. And so they really just came up with a strategy of how they want to fill their educational programs, because many of the programs there were not at full capacity. So the objective here was to find areas of progress that can be achieved, you know, really like the low-hanging fruit here. Before the legislation is even passed, what can we be doing now? And next, we went to step 2, where they were getting into some of the mechanics of how to make this transition occur. There was a lot of discussions about credit hours. What is the degree going to say? Where or who will actually confer the degree? So you can see they were beginning to think about what are the steps that they would need to do at their community college or at their medical center program, where they can begin to actually effectuate this. And then we went into what articulation agreements look like, and they have some already there in New York, which I felt was very beneficial to them moving forward, because they're a little bit ahead of the game here. But they have 2+2 programs, they got a 3+1 program, and they even described a 1+2+1 program. And so, you know, the answer here is, you just need an articulation agreement that works for you and your partners. It doesn't matter what it's like. And again, these need to be in place in 5 years. So step 2 really was, how do we create articulation agreements and move forward here? And then step 3, some people thought that step 3 should be 2. Some thought that 1 could be 2. I mean, you can understand they were really thinking through the process is needed. But nonetheless, they all agreed that a transition timeline needed to be created. Some were saying, let's do this by 2025. Others thought it, once the legislation was passed, as it's expected to, that it would be probably a year or so before the time clock would actually begin. So that's where the 2027 comes in. And then they really started amongst themselves, and this was the beauty of the day for me, is that once they started talking here about time frames and a transition plan, I was really just out of the picture at that point in their minds, because they all started talking amongst themselves. They started subdividing into committees and making plans for their next meeting. And that was the beauty of everything here. So we started out at the beginning where everyone really didn't know what to expect, who was going to say what, who was going to be mean, who was going to be nice, you know, all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, they all left with, we need an RT education that moves the profession forward to the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I'm going to move ahead to Shauna. Some previous experiences.
Thank you very much, President Schell. So in the office, in the AARC office, there have been several different outreach projects over the last few years. So the AARC board has been committed to this for quite some time. And in 2016 and again in 2017, we as an office sent letters to a select group of programs where a baccalaureate degree is already conferred somewhere in that institution with an offer to help. And we received quite a few responses, and I have them itemized here on the email, on the slide. I think that the biggest bundle of responses were those that said either they were not interested, or the time was simply not right at their institution, or they had new faculty or new key personnel and they were trying to get acclimated to whatever was going on at the time. So the request that we have had over the past few years has been for a match with someone to help them work through this process, either the actual process itself, or they just want to talk with someone who's been through it so that they understand the context and how to go through the process and how to approach it, or how to make an appropriate rationale for their dean, their provost, whoever they needed to talk with. Or even more interestingly, they wanted help with developing curriculum and identifying of the potential curriculum for baccalaureate degrees, what would work best for them. So that ended up working us into a new committee, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes. But the board has created quite a few resources for the program considering going through this process. Dr. Goodfellow put a checklist together, I'm sorry I don't have a copy of it right in front of me, a few years ago, that helps walk through each step from the time that the program decides they want to explore this all the way until approval is provided from both the State Department of Education and the COARC, so that they can start enrolling students in that program. So when we send out the final evaluation for this, I can absolutely put that link in there for those of you who have not seen that. But we've been very reactive to the requests that have come in, knowing that we haven't heard from everyone, but this is the list of the majority of the responses we've seen thus far.
Thank you, Dr. Strickland. We're going to move to Dr. Sarakotis. If you could talk about barriers.
Sure. Happy to do so. So as the AARC Education Section Chair, in 2017, the board had a recommendation to identify at least 6 associate degree program directors in Category 4 areas, which are states that do not permit programs at community colleges to offer the baccalaureate degree, and identify the themes that were possibly challenges or barriers. And what I will say as I share these results with you is that they reflect a lot of what Dr. Goodfellow and Dr. Strickland just mentioned. So I'm just going to go question by question and just give you a general synopsis of what these 6 program directors shared with me. What would you say are the most challenging aspects for you in transitioning from associate to baccalaureate degree? The themes from the challenging aspects were, of course, the state laws, because they were in those states, and preparation of faculty, which was also mentioned as well previously in this Lunch and Learn. The uneasy to make the transition without a mandate to do so, and concern over the transition and fear of change, I think was, someone looking at what possibly could be a challenging aspect. When asked about the biggest barriers in place, they mentioned the geography, and the ability to have articulation agreements, the job differentiation issue in the workplace, and legislative issues. In asking them how they recommended that the challenges and barriers be addressed, mandate came up several times, legislation, and sharing success stories. And remember, this is in 2017, so this was an inquiry that occurred in early 2018. When asked about the opportunities that have not been explored, they suggested involving state societies, exploring unique curricular arrangements, and finally, other questions that needed to be explored or investigated on the issue. They suggested legislation, exploration of outcomes, and exploration of unique formats for the 2+2, 3+1, or 4-year formats. So that's just a synopsis of something that I reported back to the board, and this was before the issue paper was a concept, and of course the theme of mandate, I think, was something that influenced discussion on behalf of the board to look at the issue of entry to respiratory therapy practice. And that's just a little bit about the barriers and a brief discussion of the focus group. Next, we'll have Tana Han discussing career pathways.
Thank you. This is Tana Han from Boise State. I'm currently serving as the assistant dean here in the college, but I'm still closely connected to the respiratory care programs here. I'd like, Shauna, can I share my screen?
Absolutely. Let me.
The Career Pathways group has worked primarily we started with a survey of associate degree programs about 2 years ago to just gather some information from them about what they were currently doing around how many articulation agreements they had and who those were with, how the credit transfer process was working, and approximately how many of their credits generally transferred in to various places, along with when they introduced this information to their students. And so we started the work we did really around trying to promote programs to have discussions with their students about career pathways and degree advancement programs. So I would say our committees focused primarily on that. How do we take associate degree graduates and help them get a bachelor's through this degree advancement route? And so over the last year, what we worked a lot in conjunction with the AARC was on creating some resources. So this was posted to the education section not too long ago that just gives us an overview of the things that we've put together. So we were able to pull together an infographic. Again, this is a resource really for students to look at these additional career pathways that are generated with earning of a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. We put together a short PowerPoint that can be shown, as well as a catalog statement that associate degree programs could add in that shows the language that exposes them to what degree advancement is. As well as when the AARC did their BNRT video, we have a few that we're working on getting out there that really speak to degree advancement for the students. I'll quickly share this PowerPoint. Did that change over when I switched the slide? Hopefully. So again, the main objectives of our PowerPoint are just to introduce associate degree students to what a degree advancement is, talk about some of the career pathways within respiratory care that they might not be exposed to in their rotations at their associate degree programs, and then provide some additional resources. So we have this slide here that really kind of helps at least put some framework around adding to the opportunities as we go up in degree levels to really show there are places you can go as we get more education. Trying to talk to them about some of the benefits around getting a bachelor's degree, such as an increase in compensation in some places, other job preferences, or possibly promotions. We also think there's quite a bit of research just showing the personal growth that happens from getting a bachelor's degree around, for a lot of people, it's been a goal for them for a long time. They just happen to start at associate degree level, and a lot of information is out there about confidence that's earned as we go up in degrees. And then all degree advancement is somebody that takes RTs from an associate to a bachelor's degree, although we know it can also be taking someone from a bachelor's degree to a master's degree. Part of this was to also provide some visuals. So this is really directly from the infographic that we took, again, to show this path of if this is your starting point with an AAS, for instance, in order to move forward, you would need to earn the RRT and complete those degree advancement courses that might be needed for entry. And a little different path if you get an Associate of Science. And then what the career advancement looks like with a bachelor's degree in a little bit more of a visual form. And start plugging this idea of RT master's degrees to try to call students to action by talking to their advisors and faculty about what courses they may be able to take currently that are more likely to transfer, or plan for, if there is an articulation agreement in place, what that might look like moving forward for them. A slide to try to call them to action, and some links to some resources. So again, on the AARC's website, there is, oops, maybe I was there. Nope, this is tab over here, sorry. There are some good resources existing for degree advancement programs in, for students to learn more about these pathways. Moving forward, I'll say what our committee is looking at doing. We just actually met yesterday. I think moving forward, what we're really looking at is trying to gather more resources for educators around articulation agreements, as well as how can programs adjust some of their curriculum to better set students up for transferring on to a bachelor's program. So that is my overview.
Thank you, Latana. Dr. Russian, do you have, what happened to you? Are you there?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Shauna, can you set up so I can share my screen?
Sure. Lutana, would you unshare, please?
Oh, yes, I will.
And then Dr. Russian, you should be able to share with the green button at the bottom.
Okay, so can everybody see the the committee charges and the two Word documents that are up?
Yes.
Okay. So just wanted to, I don't have a PowerPoint, sorry. I just wanted to share at least these two documents of what our charges are for the committee and who's part of the committee. The first two charges were sort of the initial charges that we were given, and that's what we really kind of worked from. 3 and 4 were added after the fact. We haven't made a lot of progress on those, but we will be in 2020. So most of our progress has been on, okay, what can we do about AS to BS conversion and articulation agreements? Been doing the data collection part of it, the sort of pulling together of resources, figuring out which programs are most likely quickly to convert over from AS to BS. Had several conversations with Brad Leidick from COARC and other folks in Cobert and other ARC folks, and we've sort of identified what we call the low-hanging fruit conversion programs, the programs that are respiratory care programs that are in a 4-year degree a university right now. And so our work for this coming year is to really focus first on those that we think we could help with their conversion if they're interested, and then working through the other programs that are at an associate's degree granting institution, but have the ability to grant a bachelor's degree. The conversations that we've had with people currently, there's been about 7 folks that have reached out to me in some capacity and that I've talked to. They've expressed needs related to curriculum development, to regional accreditation materials, sharing of syllabi. And so those are the types of activities that I think our committee can certainly help with. If a program is interested in converting, but maybe a little bit apprehensive and doesn't know where to begin, I think there's plenty of people on our committee that can assist in some capacity or other with either proposal development or working through the regional accreditation process, or even just sharing curriculum and syllabi. So that's kind of where our work has been. We'll continue to work on all those charges and hopefully make some progress in the area of getting AS to BS conversion.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to turn it over to Brian and Lieutenant now. I want the opportunity, we have about 25 minutes left, for you that have attended to speak up and let us know some of your issues or concerns, or just let's have a robust discussion. So Brian and Lieutenant, you want to start off the discussion, please?
Sure. I think you kind of did. So less talking from me, and I'd love to hear from the group of, maybe barriers or struggles that they're struggling with, and if there's ways that we can help them out, ideas as well. Anybody want to jump in first?
Brian, this is Shauna. Just as a technical thing, I believe you can share your screen and make a whiteboard and take notes on that, if that's helpful.
Okay.
Hey, this is Karen again. I know we talked a lot about some of the activities we're starting and some of the barriers, but I know that there's some successes out there. Does anyone have anything to share that maybe it's a small step or maybe it's a big step that we can share with others that are listening? Hello? I just want to add that in order for us to help in the future to set up these lunch and learns, we'd really like to hear from you, and don't be shy. We want to make this lunch and learn beneficial to those that are in the process or thinking of the process. So no question is inappropriate, and any idea is great, because we really do want to set something up that's successful for you. and I'll shut up.
All right, well, I'll actually start with something that I've heard. So one of the things that I think some people are scared about, you know, transitioning into, you know, a bachelor's degree is that often you have to have higher enrollments. And if you're already struggling, you know, with enrollment to begin with, you know, going to that next level, it makes administrators, it makes the sell to administrators, I guess, a little bit harder. And so we've been focusing on recruitment, and I'd love to know what you think kind of about BNRT now. Are we heading in the right direction with those types of things? And do you think they're beneficial?
Well, I'll just jump in. I think the BNRT is helpful, and I think anything that the AARC and the rest of us can do to spread the word and to market the profession and our programs is going to be beneficial. You know, in an academic institution, you're driven by enrollment, and if you don't keep your enrollment high, the university would certainly close a program, and we're seeing that in some cases. We're also seeing some new growth in areas as well. But one thing that we've done at Texas State is we offered a preliminary course, an elective course, so that students can get in and learn about the profession, and it doesn't count against them if they don't enter our program. And so that's helped us to recruit, and we're seeing great numbers as far as applications. And I think other programs that can do things like that to reach out to the university community or college community would only help. And just while my mic is hot, speaking of a shout out, as I was going through looking at conferring institutions that that can offer a bachelor's degree, so associate's degree institutions that can offer a bachelor's degree, it's hats off to the state of Florida, because they have really made some major pushes to advance education. I mean, they've got, by my list, and my list is probably old, 97 institutions that can offer a bachelor's degree in some capacity. And so whatever they're doing and whatever they did to push the Florida legislature to offer a BS degree at traditional AS institutions, we need to figure out a way to model that.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things that we've been struggling with is these states that can offer bachelor's degrees at, say, the community college level. Many of them actually don't spell out respiratory therapy. In other words, I think Brad's famous kind of line for us is that some of them it's culinary, and it's kind of weird things that are spelled out that you can offer a bachelor's degree, but not respiratory therapy. And to me, that seems like low-hanging fruit of, I think it's 20-some states in which we could do a grassroots effort and really try to get respiratory therapy added to that, because I think only 4 or 5 actually spell out respiratory therapy. And so that's something that certainly we need to work on.
Yeah, especially if those, and I know what you're talking about because I'm looking at the table, especially those places that have a health science type degree already, whether it's nursing or something else. It seems like it would be an easy push to try to get another health science respiratory care program in there. But we know it's expensive to run a respiratory care program, but if you can keep enrollment high, then it'll pay off.
I'd just like to add to recruitment a bit. Some of the things that we've been implementing here that have, I think they haven't paid off just yet because we just really hit it hard this fall, was getting students engaged in recruitment. Our current students, part of their community service is reaching out to high schools, reaching out to different organizations and promoting the profession. I think the other part of that is within our university, we're part of a large medical center. There's opportunity to reach out to not only the programs that are there, but also to employees that's connected at the respiratory department is always short of staffed, and there's employees in hospitals that are looking for change of a career. So if we can somehow have managers help us recruit some of those longtime employees in hospital settings to come into our program, I think that would be another way. And also the university has programs that I just found out about that reach out to different diversity groups, and they bring students in to the program to do a tour. And I've probably done 6 to different cultural diversity groups within the city, which we hadn't ever really reached out to before. So I think just thinking outside of the box of what do you have at your setting that you can already have a system in play. Now that person emails me all the time wanting to do a tour. So there might be the resources within your own institution you can capitalize on.
Brian, I have a question for the group. This is Shauna. One of the things that we've been hearing about is the significant turnover of key personnel in respiratory care programs. And so I wondered if those who were on the call had a large amount of turnover recently, or turnover of persons that would make the consideration of moving from an associate to a baccalaureate program not feasible at this point in time.
Yeah, does anybody have those experiences?
This is Becky Bird from Amarillo College.
Hey, Becky.
We recently have had a program director retire, and so I'm the program director now, and we've hired a new DCE, and we are very willing and ready to advance to a BS degree. We've just experienced a little pushback from our community college. The reason being, they say they don't want to duplicate services in the area. That being said, we have Texas Tech nursing, we have West Texas A&M nursing, and then Amarillo College nursing, all in the same town, but yet we're the only respiratory care program within 4+ hours of any direction. So I personally don't think that the turnover of personnel is an issue for us per se.
Okay. Any other thoughts? I think some of the key personnel turnover issues certainly are driven by some of the COARC reports that we've seen with the number of, DCEs and those types of things changing over and turning over pretty rapidly. I think another thing that weighs in pretty heavily in the back of our minds is our workforce survey, which, I guess we'll be doing another one pretty soon, but, those types of things, knowing that a lot of people are going to be retiring in that. And so if we already have kind of a current turnover rate of, that seems pretty significant, if we multiply that by the retirement that's about to come in 5 years or so, we'll be able to sustain these programs. And then not to mention taking it to a higher level. And so if we take it to a bachelor's degree, and many of the accreditors would require a level above master's or even higher, that pool starts to get a little bit smaller and smaller. And then if we need master's degree programs to create educators of the future, that requires, terminal degrees. And we really don't have a terminal degree for our profession per se, other than the master's degree. But getting those, if you look at the workforce survey, that number is even smaller. And so how do we create those individuals?
I guess my question, this is Karen, is to the group. do you have buy-in from the respiratory care departments within your community, like your clinical sites with advanced degrees, or is it pretty standard that they'll take both AS and BS, or is there career ladders? I think one of the things that the board has been looking at is how do we keep managers engaged? How do we show the value within a department to promote advanced degrees? And so I was just curious with those on the call if this has come up in your area.
This is Sharon. That's a question that I was actually going to ask, the same question, similarly to that question. Does the group think that it would benefit our profession if the managers mandated the same thing that they mandated to nursing 10 years ago, that you have to have a BSRT to be a manager, or you had to have a master's to be a director? Do you think that would be a benefit? Because I find that it's 10 years later and they have not done it in my district, in my area. It still requires just an associate level to be a manager in our discipline.
Excuse me. This is Nick from Michigan. Hi, everybody.
Hey, Nick.
I can speak a little bit to that, what we're doing here in Michigan. I know at my advisory board for our BSRT program, I have all of the directors on our advisory board. And at the last board meeting, it was kind of an ask of them to kind of do just that, and make sure that they're kind of implementing that across the board. And we're starting to see in our state a lot of the hospitals for those types of positions put at least minimally bachelor preferred. And I think that will help us. The problem comes when do we designate it as a BSRT, or is it any bachelor degree? And that's not, you know, that's not something that we can, I don't know if that's something we can do or mandate, but I think that would give us kind of the benefit of getting a bachelor's. You know, is it a BSRT, or can someone just get the Bachelor of Applied Science and be okay?
I think the Bachelor of...
Hi, this is Linda. Can I take that question?
Mm-hmm.
So in the 2030 document that was posted last October, it indicates a Bachelor's of Respiratory Therapy or a Bachelor's in Health Science that has a concentration in respiratory therapy. Either of those two degrees would satisfy the aim of going to bachelor's entry.
Okay.
I'm not sure that's what you're talking about though, Nick. It's like, you know, because I did a Bachelor's of Health Sciences, for example, after my associate's degree in respiratory therapy. And so it wasn't a concentration in
Right.
therapy. It was a Bachelor's of Health Sciences at Old Dominion University.
Yeah.
It wasn't really, it had no respiratory classes in it. And so I think that's the question you're asking, right? Is if someone like a bachelor's degree in that, would they be just equally preferred, if you will, since we're using that word preferred, to a bachelor's of respiratory therapy?
Right. And that's my degree too. I have the bachelor. I did in Michigan, we didn't have the Bachelor's of Science in Respiratory Therapy when I did my baccalaureate degree. And so I did the Bachelor of Applied Science. And they recruited as a Bachelor of Applied Science in Respiratory Therapy, but it was classes that had nothing additional in terms of respiratory care or respiratory therapy classes or health classes for that matter. It was, courses that were related to liberal arts, general education, that would get me to that 120 credit level. And so, that's where my struggle is in terms of when it comes to recruiting students. How do I compete against that? And that was my ask of the managers, is to try to somehow mandate the BSRT over these, BAS type degrees.
Right, and I think that's really the key, I believe, is finding these stories. Kind of going back to what George talked about earlier with some of the things that they'd like to have these directors is, success stories. And so, so Nick, if you have like a success story in your area of getting these guys to change from, associates as a minimum to, bachelors as preferred, in their marketing for positions, to me, that's success. That's a step in the right direction. We'd love to have BSRT, I think, or RC mandated, but we're not there yet. But I know Linda has some success stories with the master's degree in Atlanta, and so there are some managers that really prefer that, for example, and that's a success story too. And so I think it depends on the locality and those types of things. But I think we need to somehow market those success stories in those regions and get that out to the rest of the public.
Yeah. And one of the things when we talk about community colleges and the transition, something that we're working on in our state is we're looking at formulating a 1+2+1 agreement. And so this is very fresh and very new, but we're starting to meet, I believe we start next week, start having meetings with all of the community colleges in hope that our articulation agreements, we can expand to allow the opportunity for students to start here at our university for year 1 and then do the associate level program in year 2 and 3, and then finish year 4 with our online BSRT program. And it basically will save a student an entire year of coursework when you really sit down and think about it. Typical community colleges, at least here in our state, it's 3 years. And then the BSRT would take them 2. So that's a typical 5-year program. And we were able to kind of formulate a 1-2-1, and they'll be done in 4 years, save them, a lot of credits. And we've gotten buy-in at the university. It's just now we have to get buy-in from the community colleges to pretty much guarantee us seats if we're going to kind of have this. But it is something we're looking at and transitioning here in our state. That is something that we think will be beneficial, because I think the fear is that if this does get mandated nationally, if we say, BS entry, that all the community colleges are just going to be gone, whatever. So that's kind of the fear. And I think that this might give them some type of reassurance that their need and that they will never be going away, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I want to go back to Sharon, because one of the things I think we've seen in a lot of surveys too of managers is that puts some of the onus back on us as educators is supply and demand. Because I think we've seen surveys from the 2015 and beyond, and then several other surveys that have been done in the past, is that their preference is bachelor's prepared, but they just can't hire them. And so there's just not enough graduates. And we see that again in the co-op reports, is there's just not enough graduates to meet the demand. And so many of them are scared to put down, bachelor's required, because what happens if you have no bachelor's applicants and you still need to fill that position?
I think I would be happy to see if they would just even put bachelor's preferred.
Yeah, I agree.
But I don't even see that.
I agree.
Think and 10 years later, I'm asking them, why do you not put bachelor's preferred when 10 years ago in the same city, RTs were ahead of the nurses when at least in this city, in this network, RTs were ahead of the nurses when it came to the bachelor degree. So I just wanted to know if they thought we just didn't have the RTs. So is that is it that they just don't know that we have it? So I appreciate this luncheon, because there are some great ideas, and I think that the collaboration with the hospitals and the schools is a plus, because maybe we need to collaborate more. for the administrators to know the level of expertise that's within the RT network.
Yeah, I agree. Piggybacking on what Sharon said, I think there's a lot of hospital personnel, HR folks who just don't know, CEOs, C-suite people who just don't know that, oh, there's a bachelor's degree in respiratory therapy. Because we see that and hear that in our conversations with some of these folks.
I'm going to just interrupt briefly. We have about 5 minutes left, and we're just really getting started on a good discussion, and we've been taking notes to some of your suggestions. First of all, I want to applaud Nick for thinking ahead and pulling in managers to your advisory meeting and asking for help to move to bachelor's. I think we all could use that information to do that. And I also want to thank everyone for the opportunity to hear your concerns. We would really appreciate that as we move forward with this information and provide these webcasts or Zooms in the future, that you reach out to your colleagues within your area, ask them to join in. Right now, we've limited it to how many people are on the colleges so we can start discussion, but we want to hear from you and we want to hear your ideas. So please forward any more after you go home and think about it. Usually when I'm in bed, I think out loud about what we talked about and I come up with these different things. So if you think of something, please let us know. We're going to be organizing for the next Zoom coming up in February. So Shauna will spread the word again. We appreciate your time, and I hope this is a start of something that we can promote and really grow on, so that we as the AARC board and staff can help you with some of these issues we're hearing, and maybe reach out to you for some of the experiences you have. So if you start something, keep a good record of it and share that with us, because no idea is a bad idea, and I'm sure people are hungry for that information. I think we're about ready to close down. And
can I interrupt for a second? One of the things I also want to try to send you guys home with, as well as if you have problems, bring them to us. In other words, and give us a heads up. If you can email one of us or Shauna or anybody to help kind of organize us, and then we can prepare prior to the next time. But we want to be a resource, and I think if we all put our heads together, we can often solve almost all the problems. And so give us an opportunity to do that, and think kind of ahead, if you will, and then send us a note to let us prepare, and then we'll try to do our best at the February 28th date that we come with some answers that we can at least present.
And I also want to take the time to thank the panel today for kind of getting us started off on this discussion. We will let you know ahead of time some of our topics as we fine tune them, and hopefully we can start to build some resources that will help everyone. Shauna, how are we doing on time?
We're doing great, Karen. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Do look into your email. I'm going to send a survey asking you for further information and some ideas for future presentations. President Shell has been focused on making sure she meets your needs, and we don't know what those are unless you tell us. So after today's meeting, I will send out a survey, and then on AARC Connect, I will post the next meeting date sign-up form for anyone who is interested in joining us on February 28th.
Okay, we're going to sign off, but thank you very much, everyone. Have a great weekend. It's snowing here, so we'll see.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone.